Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm David.
And this is the Practical Guitarist Podcast.
The podcast for people who eat, sleep, and breathe guitar. Hello, Jim.
Hello, David.
I was going to let you start us off, but I was like, I didn't cue you properly, so I'm just exhausted. Like, it's just not going to happen right.
I am totally torn up.
Jim and I both have had major road trips in the last couple of days, and as we mentioned on the show last week, I just got back from Vegas this afternoon. I was supposed to be in yesterday. We drove all the way out there with two 12-hour days. Well, one was 13, I think. Stayed over in Colorado, and then drove through the Rockies the next morning, and through Utah down into Arizona, into Las Vegas. If you've never done that drive, it's a picturesque drive, but if you try to do it in a marathon session, you need a second person because it's dangerous. But the other part of it is that it's mentally exhausting, especially the second day when you're driving through the mountains and even a stretch of Arizona, which is only like 10 miles through Arizona, but it's the most ridiculous 10-mile drive you've ever been on in your life. It's all cliffs on either side of the road, and it's just overhangs, and I've done it before, but we didn't plan on making this trip, so I didn't really have time to mentally prepare myself for doing that, and I ended up driving a lot of the precarious stuff. My wife and I switched off frequently. Every time we gas up, we'd switch. So it was every 3 or 4.
That's always a good idea.
Every 3 or 4 hours on the way out there, but that's where the fun begins. So we get there, and we're there for about an hour. We stop at In-N-Out Burger to get a sandwich before we go back to her parents' house, who are out of town. We're staying in their place while they're gone. We go to In-N-Out Burger, which is like a 35-minute wait, right? Because it's all car traffic right now.
Of course.
And pull into the parking lot, and all of a sudden, I'm talking to my brother on my phone, and the gas light, or not the gas light, the engine light comes on. So I see it, and I immediately use the F word, and I'm like, what now? So we end up, I kind of sit and think about it for a while, and I'm like, I'm just going to have to take it to the dealer in the morning. Like, I'm going to have to find a local Ford dealer and take it over there and hope for the best, which is what I did. I called around. I was like, well, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get it in, because usually you have to have an appointment for that. So I took it over. I think it's Country Ford or something like that. Anyway, Ford Country. Anyway, they took the car, and they had it overnight. We were supposed to leave the following day, so we're waiting kind of for the car to come back before we can leave. And in the middle of it, they basically call me, and they tell me that we don't have the part. I asked if it was safe to drive. They said, yeah, just keep it close to full. And so at first I'm like, well, we can probably do that. Like, we can stop every quarter of a tank and just fill it up. I think thinking about it, I'm like, that's like 20 stops or 22 stops. Well, the guy, so we go and we pick the car up, and I'm like, I'm just going to take it to a local Midas. I can have him put a non-OEM part on it to fix it. I'm going to get the valve from the dealer. They shouldn't even have to run the diagnostic. And I go to the dealer. And actually, when we picked up my oldest daughter, because that's what we're there to do, we're picking up my oldest daughter. We talked to her dad for a minute, and he says, well, I know a mechanic. He's the main guy over at Kia. And he fixes all the family cars. He says, call him. He'll take care of you. So she texts him, and she starts getting in contact with him. Next thing we know, we get a phone call going, and he's, you're fine to drive. He's like, come over here and get some fuel cleaner from me. So we went over to the dealership. We threw fuel cleaner in it. No, there's more to the story. So we throw fuel cleaner in it, and he tells us basically drive back on premium, and just try to keep it above a half tank. So that cut number of stops in half. We still had about double the stops we did coming out. It took us 3 days to get back, but because we left at 1 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock, and the first day we only drove 8 hours. And then the last day we only drove 5 hours to balance it out. So we ended up, getting all the way to Nebraska, about halfway through Nebraska, which is a little over halfway in the trip. I would say Colorado, the edge of Colorado is probably the halfway point. Anyway, we're 3/4 of the way through Nebraska, and drivers in Nebraska cannot drive. If we have show listeners in Nebraska, I'm sure you can relate. Anyway, so we're driving back through Nebraska, and I'm losing my mind. There's a guy that cuts me off, and then there's a guy that goes to merge in, and he can't figure out whether he wants to get in front or behind me, and he can't figure it out. And so he ends up slamming on his brakes and getting all mad because he couldn't get in front of me, and he couldn't get behind me because he was not paying attention to what I was doing as a driver. And about a mile up the road, I go to pass a truck, and then he cuts in front of me, and then it's this whole thing, and I get ticked off, and I hit the gas, and all of a sudden misfire. So I'm like, I ended up pulling over on the side of the road, and I just sat there for a minute. I didn't say anything. My wife's looking at me. My stepdaughter's looking at me. Didn't say a word to me because they knew. And I'm just like, I just stopped for a minute. I shut the car off. I figured out there's a diagnostic mode on the car so you can actually start it up and you could see some of the codes. So I turned the car into diagnostic mode. I flipped through the menu, no codes. And I realized not even the check engine light's on. So I'm like, well, must have been a misfire. So I just got back on the road and we limped home. We did not drive quick. We ended up sitting behind truck drivers for most of the trip, barely passing anyone, driving around in the country at night, which if you're not familiar with, that's a deer hazard. In areas where we saw multiple deer during the day, no less. So it was a harrowing experience. We stayed in a little podunk town in Iowa that I don't even know the name of. I say podunk because it was small. I come from small towns like that, so don't take that the wrong way. But anyway, we stayed in this hotel, and it was actually reasonably nice. We stayed in another hotel. It was like a pit, and we paid a lot of money for that pit, which really ticked me off. They're on blast on what's that? Yelp. Yeah, because I'm like, no, you put us in like the slave quarters from the Titanic. Like that's what that was. It was really bad. I was like, I can't even believe you have rooms like this. I'm surprised we had a window. I really am. And it was abysmal. They had Bellman's carts. No, you couldn't use Bellman's carts on the first floor because there were stairs. So it was like we had to carry all of our crap all the way down this long hallway. There was no parking. We showed up and the entire hotel parking lot was completely full. They had a graduation.
Oh no.
And the parking lot was completely full. It was horrible.
What state was this?
This was in Colorado. So in terms of the COVID thing, like we're taking it easy. We're going to quarantine for a couple days, shelter in place. I'm fairly confident that none of us have been in contact with anybody who's been sick. But again, you don't want to roll the dice with that. So I'm going to try to limit my exposure to any other individuals. But it was the thing that struck me and why I wanted to talk about it on the show and give this big in-depth thing about it was like, if you've ever been on tour, I have not been on tour. I would love, I keep telling myself I would love to go on tour. I feel for you now. When you have to go from Chicago to Texas to play, like let's say you're playing a show here and then you go to Austin and you're playing like either the next night, I can't even imagine it. I can't imagine it. I am so exhausted right now that I'm not sure I'm going to make it through the show without falling asleep.
Most of us were young when we were doing that, but yeah, a lot younger, I should say. Well, I did some touring when I was your age, so it's tough.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think another thing happens if somebody else is driving the van, that's one thing. But like nowadays, there's so many independent artists that tour in their own van, and they're the ones driving it. It's like, how do you guys have the energy to do this? I mean, I love music and I would still do it, but I'm still like, I'm in the frame of mind, like how, like physically how, because I'm like beyond exhausted at this point. Granted, in those kind of situations, you're probably splitting the drive up between three or five people. So that's a little bit different.
We had 5 of us, and 4 of us drove. And it was an interesting thing. We'd go for 3 to 4 days at a time at a clip, and you'd go a long ways. Then expect to get back and work your regular day job. Tuesday morning or whatever. If you had like a Memorial Day weekend or you had something else, or you had to plan time off around it. A lot of times I would take time off. I would take paid time off to then go work.
Well, I mean, that's
because we do had to drive.
But you know what? We're fortunate in that we make money at our hobby, and so taking time off to go do this doesn't seem crazy. It's like, well, I'm going to get a little bit of money, but really this is just because it's something I love to do. Other people go skiing. They take time off and they go skiing, or they take time off and they go hunting.
Right.
We go play guitar. That's the only difference.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of guys that take time off and go golfing.
Yeah.
So it's not really a big stretch to say I'm going to take some time off.
Yeah, I mean, there's something you can improve at anyway. If anybody's ever tried to golf, like, you can't get better at that. Trust me, I've tried. So Jim, tell us about your road trip.
So I went to North Charleston. So I'm in a lockdown. And while I was there, it was just crazy. So I didn't come in contact physically or, within probably closest maybe 12 feet of somebody, 10 feet. I did have to, other than one person, I guess 2, because my contact trace had 2. I had to give the government a contact trace, and it was 2 people. The one person was my manager, and the other one was a government service employee who was working with me to set up my remote laptop. And he had to reach to grab some stuff and do some typing for me. So because I don't have, full access, which makes sense,
Yeah,
government's not going to give you full access to your computer. But I had complete separation from the people who gave me my badge, from the people who gave me my, changed my access certificates on my ID card and everything else. So I only came within. My boss and I were we rode the same car to and from the location. But she gets checked regularly, and I live up here, and plus, we got checked everywhere we went. It was, temperature, take temperature here. They did all kinds of stuff, making sure nobody had anything. And I just didn't go anywhere or do anything. Everybody up here was like, "Oh, you got to check out this restaurant, this restaurant." I'm like, "Oh, I'm not going to any restaurants. You nuts?"
Yeah,
I'm staying in a hotel room for 2 reasons. One, I'm getting a per diem.
Right. Well, yeah.
And the less I spend of that, the more I get. And to keep, and 2, probably more importantly, I don't want to be exposed. So I stuck it out.
Yeah, it's and so if you go in your local area, I think people are a little bit more comfortable with what's going on. They're sort of know like the protocol.
Right.
It's definitely different in different places. Having seen an incredible cross section of the United States over the last 5 days, 6 days.
Yeah.
I have seen people.
I stopped south of the border. I got gas, but I wore a mask and I wore gloves, and I washed my hands before and after. That was our pit stop south of the border. For those who've never driven I-95 going up and down the East Coast, it's right on the North Carolina, South Carolina border. It's just into South Carolina. And I stopped in Emporia, which is Virginia, which has a low rate. And again, did the gloves and the mask and did all that stuff. So my son and I were very cautious. Didn't get near anybody. Even if you were said, "Hey, this stuff can travel, 12 feet or 10 feet," we weren't going to get anything. And everybody else was wearing a mask. Everybody was respecting each other, and I think that was a good thing.
Where we were, and it was varying degrees. You could tell the places where people were concerned because they were wearing masks. The places where people were not concerned, it was open season, and that did not correlate with where coronavirus was like actively going on. We were looking at the charts as we were driving through and looking at each county to determine if we could stay there and that kind of thing. And it was kind of like really odd, and got to the point where my wife and I were actually wearing 2 masks at once, because there were certain places where, I mean, they were nowhere is as bad as Florida right now. Like I think we can all agree that the Florida numbers that are coming out, I think yesterday they had 15,000 cases announced in Florida. Nowhere is as bad as Florida right now, but I will say that it's pretty clear that no one's going to fault you for wearing a mask, even in the places where nobody is, because they sort of understand you're a traveler. And the first time we got out, I think it was in Iowa. It was the first major gas stop we made, and there was nobody there wearing a mask. And as we're there, we see 2 other people coming in wearing a mask, and we did get some people kind of looking at us weird, but we were like, you know what? I don't care if you're in Iowa. I'm doing this to protect you because I've just come from Chicago and I'm going to go clear to Las Vegas and back, If you run a gas station right now and you're not wearing a mask, or you don't have one of those big giant plastic face shields that's floor to ceiling, I feel for you, because you are putting yourself at risk.
Every single person that comes in there.
We went to the world's largest truck stop today, and that was my wife described it as a cesspool.
Cool. Yeah. Right now, I don't think I'd want to go there. I agree with you there. I wore glasses too the whole time. So, that was the other thing.
I had sunglasses and like the mask, and you couldn't even see me. It was like, I looked like a Unabomber.
Yeah. I could have been anybody walking in, kind of scary.
And the habitual use of hand sanitizer. I mean, I just getting in the car, like my hands, like even we're driving down the road, give me the hand sanitizer.
Yep.
Like not even, I didn't even get out of the car.
I keep a bottle at my desk. I'm in my house.
Yeah.
I keep a bottle at my desk. I have a mask right here. I have hand sanitizer. I have a mask in my car. I have more hand sanitizer. But because I've always had allergies, and because I'm a little more prone to getting colds because of my allergies.
Me as well.
Yep. I tend to be a little more cautious about hand washing and touching my face and all the things they're telling you now. It's like, oh, I always did that stuff. So not really, other than wearing a mask in public, I was already doing everything that they say to do. And I always wore a mask when I was working around a house, because again, if I kicked up dust, if I had a sneeze, you've probably been there. I mean, anybody that's got allergies,
well,
you get a sneezing fit.
That.
God,
so
an hour.
The hardwood floor that's back here, we put this in. It's actually vinyl. We put this in a couple months ago, before we started going video, and we had carpet, and the carpet was ancient. When we started ripping the carpet out, I mean, I was horribly sick. Even if I wore a mask, I was horribly sick for weeks. As soon as the carpet was gone and that was all done, my allergies cleared up almost immediately. It's like I don't even have to take an allergy pill now. And I have cats, which is a whole other thing. But anyway, so
let's get to some guitar stuff.
Yeah, because
I got some stuff I want to talk about.
So I actually got to play last week, right? Like I had my guitar with me on the road. I didn't take anything to amplify it or whatever. We were in Vegas for 2 days, roughly. We were there for like because we came in overnight and we stayed, and then we were there a full day, and then we left at 1 o'clock next day. So we were there 2 days. I actually did get to play. And actually the most exciting thing that I've had happen was today. HW, who was on the show recently, Tone Junkie, that's his profile company, released the mystery amp today, or on Friday. It was on Friday. It is the Purple Plexi. Purple Plexi. Okay, so apparently Marshall made a small run of Purple Plexis back in the 60s. The one in question is a 68. I think they're all 68s. This particular amplifier has the pedigree that you would not believe, in the sense that it is bone stock. Everything in this amplifier is the way it came off the line. You're hard pressed to find a 68 plexi that doesn't have a transformer swap, doesn't have something going, like a cap job done to it. And this thing was almost never used. So it's like a time machine. It actually was in a collector's hands for a number of years, and they had so many amplifiers and so many guitars, they never played it. It almost never got played. And so it ended up in Tone Junky's hands. He paid somewhere in the neighborhood, and this is the number that's been quoted, $14,000 for this amp, because it's super rare and it's in incredible condition. There are pictures on Tone Junky store, but he released the video clips for it, right? Where he talked about the pedigree. And you can see HW is genuinely excited about this thing. In fact, I believe in the clip he says, I want to be buried inside the cabinet for this amp. That's the quote. I love this amp so much, I want to be buried inside the cabinet. So just, put that in perspective. It sounds gorgeous. I don't have the profiles yet. I'm not going to do a full review of them, but I'm going to get them. And we'll talk about them next week, I'm sure. So look forward to that. Jim, you got guitar stuff to talk about. Let's do it. Yep.
So I've been watching a guitar that I'm not going to check too much about because I don't want anybody to snipe me. But I think, is that still a term? Where you steal of somebody's bid before they get a chance to complete it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have a very nice guitar that I'm looking at that would be very nice for me.
Is it museum quality as well?
It is. It looks like it. I'm looking forward to seeing it in person, but it looks like it's in museum quality. Trying to stick that letter in there. Anyway, I looked at it while I was in South Carolina, and it said sold. And I was like, oh, of course, it got sold. So I sent the guy a congratulations, and I said, hey, congratulations on selling it. I wish it was me, but I hope the guy or woman who bought it enjoys it very much. And he wrote me back and goes, oh, I am so glad you said that. He goes, that was a mistake. I was just updating it. And he put it back. He goes, it's still available. You're good. And so I looked at his collection. This particular one, he doesn't have any more of, but he has 5 of these very nice, very sleek, very cool guitars. 5.
Hey,
and
Jim,
then he has
I don't mean to stop you, but I have a V pick in my hand right now.
Wow, that is very cool. And he has people are probably understanding what
yes, I think the code has been broken at this point.
It's probably very broken. Very broken. But he has 5 Gibson Flying Vs, 5 of them. And he has like 3 Les Pauls and 2 SGs and like 1 Strat or 1 Tele.
Right.
And it's like, he's definitely a Gibson guy. And I said, let me show you my collection. He goes, oh yeah, you would appreciate this guitar. He goes, it'll definitely find it a good home. So I'm looking forward to it. And then right after I'm making the deal with the guy, I had been looking for a puppy, and the woman that was a breeder, through my friend last week, I don't want to go through too much. I had reached out to him. She said they're going to have a litter. The litter was born yesterday, and I got first pick. So Drogon, thusly named because he's a giant dragon, and this will be a little puppy. It's this big, and
yes,
he'll be a dragon of my own. Was born yesterday.
I think it's fairly safe to say it's not the runt of the litter.
Yeah, no, yeah, he is. He is
really?
the runt of the litter. That's what's funny. I picked him because he's jet black, and he's just the cutest little thing. Of course, when I picked him, he was only, the pictures I got were at video were only minutes, literally minutes of age. looking forward to bringing him home first week of September, which is Labor Day weekend. So I'm looking forward to that. And so I'm out a lot of money this month. Let's just say I'm spending a few $1,000s.
Well, I mean, I had to buy tires and like I bought. I mean, it's just and it's not stopping because school starts soon, and I got a high schooler in the house now.
I got Christmas coming.
Anyway, I'm still waiting on stuff from Sweetwater, man. I'm actually waiting on stuff from JHS. Yeah, because the Univibe pedal, the Unicorn from JHS, has actually been on back order. And JHS shut down during the large portion of the coronavirus thing, and then they actually have opened operations, but they haven't caught up yet. So I'm waiting on that. I'm excited. I hope that shows up soon.
We should reach out to Josh and see if he can come on the show. Tell us about that, because that would be cool.
My wife will murder me, but yes, I would love to have Josh Scott on the show. I figured she's probably in the other room saying somewhere like, no, you can't have him on the show. She, for whatever reason, she has this like adverse reaction to Josh Scott, and she says he looks creepy or something. I don't understand it. But she looks at him and she goes, and then backs off. And it's not because he's like a guitar pedal maker or anything. It's just because something about his appearance rubs her the wrong way.
Wow.
So I can't wait till she comes to Gear Fest with me the next time, and I introduce her to Josh Scott, and she has a panic attack and probably slaps me and gives me the divorce paperwork.
You and I will look like little people next to Josh Scott.
Yeah, he's like 11 feet tall. With arms as big as tree trunks. You know.
Yeah. So we've got guests next week. Don't forget.
Yeah, we have guests next week.
Yep, we have guests on the show, so we'll have 2 guests on the show.
Yeah, apparently.
Yep. So we are literally going to talk to a mom and pop shop, one of the most popular mom and pop shops on YouTube. So we've reached out to the Lollies and RNA Music. That's RNA. So Ryan and Angela are going to join us. As far as we know, unless things change, it'll be next weekend. Ryan, I spoke with Ryan personally, so that should be interesting. Looking forward to that and getting a view of a mom and pop who's been through the COVID thing, who's been through the forced shutdown, doing the online lessons. As I said, I sponsored a student during that time. I think it as the show, by the way, I take personal accountability for that.
You can take personal credit for it. I don't care.
Yeah, no.
It's like not like the show paid for it.
Yeah. No.
I mean, the show hasn't paid for anything really.
No, not really. Looking forward to at least buying pizza during the next Sweetwater event.
Yeah, hopefully.
But, I think it's important because it definitely will give us some insight as to some of the trials and tribulations of a small business. Even it's a guitar shop, but it's still a small business in this really trying time. Because as everybody knows, things are going backwards. We're falling backwards. And there was an expectation the summertime was going to be walking forwards for most people. And instead it's walking backwards. So
yeah, I mean, you know what's interesting though? So
yeah,
I think the perception about illness in the summer is that it dissipates based on the fact that people are outdoors, they're not as in close contact with one another. And if you look at the places where it's actually kind of getting out of control, those are states where it gets so hot that you don't want to be outdoors.
Yeah.
Which is very telling, right? Like, it was just something that occurred to me. So if you're going to play gigs, if you're going to play them outdoors, I don't think it's as big an issue if you're paying attention. One of our show listeners actually played an outdoor gig recently, and there was some conversation about it, and I as long as you're outdoors and you're, doing the things, the hand sanitizer and the mask and all that, we may play an outdoor gig. We Old Stumpy's been asked to play farmer's market, But here's the stipulations, right? So we're a vocal band, right? We have 2 vocalists who also play instruments, and we've been asked that we can't sing. We have to wear masks during the entire performance. And we're I get the feeling from the other band members that we're kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I'm down. I said, let's go. But they were, I don't know if I want to sing, if I want to do this, if I can't sing. And if I have to wear the mask the whole time, that's going to be really difficult anyway. So I know that's what the rule is. Yep. The other thing is, if you're singing, you're spitting stuff through the mask, forcibly eventually. Again, there's a timed effectiveness there. But I just, I don't know. It's a weird world right now. That people want music back in their lives, but like, there's no real way for us to provide it to you. Another place locally is announcing that they're going to start doing their open mic, or at least putting feelers out there to find out if people are actually going to show up. And I was actually asked, and I responded, and I said, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Until I see a case count below what it is right now, because it's actually kind of gone back up here, I am not playing an indoor venue. It's just not going to happen. And right. I could foresee sitting out the entire summer, like honestly getting to September and then watching the case counts go back up because people are indoors again, and just being like, yeah, I guess that's not going to happen. I just hope that we get some sort of vaccine on the horizon sooner rather than later. They were talking about November as, end of trials and green lighting something. So hopefully there's a couple of trials, but see, even then it's like, if it's November, guess what? You still aren't playing out until January, because there ain't going to be enough quantity available to vaccinate the entire population. So, and that's the other thing. Is like, you have a responsibility, and this is what I want to remind people is like, okay, so if I'm a performer and I want to take the risk myself, no big deal, right? And there were a couple of people that responded to this suggestion about the open mic, like, well, I'm fine. Like, I have no problem. If I get sick, I get sick. It's not about you getting sick. It's about the fact that if you're there and there's a crowd of people there, you're going to have that crowd of people getting sick. You have a responsibility to your fans and your listeners and your potential fans that they don't pass it around amongst themselves. And that's, I think big time people may get that a little bit more than, people who have like 10,000 people at their performances may have, like, they may get that a little easier than somebody who does open mics and doesn't really perform as a band on their own. And that's kind of where my concern is. Like, if I can't have my family come out and watch me, or if I can't have friends come out and watch me, I don't want random people standing there watching me either, because that means it's dangerous for them. So it'll be funny if we don't get a vaccine though, because I think they're gonna start having people badge, like, if you've had COVID already, you'll be able to have a hand stamp or something. That
this reminds me of different times, and
definitely
I don't know how far down I want to go that rabbit hole.
No, I think we should probably because a couple of times come to mind.
Well, I was in my 20s when AIDS was a thing, when it was first, and people were panicking, and a lot of the things that we made the decision that were better left to be private concerns became public, are becoming public this time. And I don't want to, how do I say that?
Well, no, I get what you're saying. Like, it's like a HIPAA issue, right?
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to tell people whether you have or have not been exposed. Save for maybe your employer under certain circumstances, because they have a legal responsibility to protect other employees. And that's something that needs to be decided by the courts.
And even then, those decisions, those things that you share are only there's certain boundaries of the information that they receive. So,
sure. And that's what I'm saying. Like, they can't give names to somebody who has an illness. They can't describe what the illness is to somebody. But see, we're already violating it all over the place in our state, because like my complex at work, we've had notifications every time somebody in the complex has gotten sick with coronavirus, and it's part of the, the contact tracing program, and you can't contact trace at a concert. You can't.
Yeah, and
what are you gonna do? You notify everyone at the concert you had potentially exposed.
Well, I only came in contact with 5,000 people, and 200 of them were in the line to get beer.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm what's the word I want? I'm the kind of person who believes that people should have certain rights. And recently I saw a thing where someone was talking about a woman that, she was saying that she had a reason she couldn't wear a mask. She has a breathing issue. And this person said, well, if she has a breathing issue, how can she yell? And I'm like, let me tell you something. You don't know. You have no idea. And you're not her doctor. And you're not a doctor. And so just shut up. And it kind of ticks me off, because what do you expect these people to have to do that have breathing issues? Wear a big B, big red B? I have breathing issues. Are we going to go down that road? Are we going to take ourselves to a point that we can't come back? And to me, it scares me, because it's like, okay, now, you're this, or you're that, or you're another thing. We're going to start stamping people. If you want to talk about being a Nazi, you want to talk about calling people Nazis. That's what they did, folks.
Yeah, I mean, they
don't go down this road.
They gave you the armband of you're not desirable, basically.
There were people early on in AIDS that were like, yeah, let's just send them all to an island, and then
without getting political. I think that's a discussion that is largely one that has to be decided by the courts and also the legislative bodies, because I will say this much: there's a big difference between wearing the scarlet letter,
right? That's what I called it,
because you actually have been cleared by someone, or you're just saying it. And that's the problem. Right. Is I as well as I do, there are many people who will just say it. And I
know that.
Dealt with many of them over the weekend. And it's frustrating, because this is a health issue, and it's not your health that you should be concerned about. It's everyone else's, because if you get sick and you hand it to someone else, that's the problem. And that's the problem, that when people talk about these concepts, they lack. That's why I brought it up. Like, when you go when you're a performer, and it's not just music, it's any sort of performance, and you're going to have a crowd of people gather around, you have to remain responsible for that crowd. Look, this is no different than like the Who getting sued for people getting crushed at their concerts. This is something that's happened before.
Or the Rolling Stones, for when the Hell's Angels killed people when they were being security at a Rolling Stones concert.
Yeah,
and they only found out afterwards. Yeah, so not good.
Yeah, and so that's basically what I'm getting at, is like the responsibility element of it. And you know what? That's another crazy thing that. Maybe it's probably a good topic for the remainder of this episode. So, like, think about the amount of times that you've heard of performers who have hired people who are horribly unscrupulous to do things for them. Like the Rolling Stones and the Hells Angels was one, right?
Yeah.
But I can think of who was it that had the manager that carried a gun? Led Zeppelin's manager used to carry a bat.
They made fun of him and
people.
Spinal Tap.
That's Peter Grant, I believe, was Led Zeppelin's manager, and he was notorious for carrying a bat, so he could intimidate hotels and everything else into doing what they needed them to do, so they could make this happen. Bat. Yeah, which is kind of silly. I mean, but the firearm, I want to say, was like somebody weird, like Bonnie Raitt. Her manager carried a gun and a suitcase filled with cash. And the suitcase was like chained to a like basically a stripper pole on the back of the bus. And so if you needed to be paid while they were on the road, they took you on the thing at gunpoint pretty much and got money out of the suitcase, which just seems like totally asinine to me. And but the fact is, like, artists are held responsible for what these people do all the time, and they seem totally aloof and uninterested in what's going on in a lot of cases.
A lot of time it's, I'm too busy to be there. They're concentrating on the art, and do we really want them to be business people? I mean,
no,
and that's really where
we don't, but they need to be able to hire competent ones. I mean,
yeah, but if you're not a competent business person, it's kind of hard to know the questions to ask. And you oftentimes trust those people. Look at Billy Joel. He wound up broke, dead broke twice.
And he's still not sure who took all the money.
Well, the first time they're 100% sure it was his brother-in-law in cahoots with the brother-in-law's sister, who was his wife.
Yeah. But,
and then she ran off, and he put it all in offshore accounts. He hid it all. It was gone.
But my suggestion was that he's basically kicked his entire band of hitmakers to the curb, because I mean, I can't take any risk. I can't. So that's what I'm saying. Like he basically made everybody the enemy.
That's right.
Which is just that seems like crossing that's borderline insanity.
Look at Willie Nelson. He was like, yeah, things are good. I'm good. I'm good. Oh, wait a minute. Didn't pay taxes for the last 40 years. What was my accountant doing? Isn't that what I pay him to do? Yeah. And instead of the accountant going to jail.
Yeah, his accountant. Well, his accountant walks away scot-free, didn't he?
I'm like, what is wrong with us? Then we don't go, wait a minute. Who actually didn't pay the taxes? Who stole that money? Oh, the accountant. No, we're not going to do that.
Yeah,
we're going to accuse this old man who lives like a pauper. Well, he doesn't live like a pauper, but he pretty much lives on a bus when he's not out doing his thing, getting high and not really caring about anything. I mean, there's a lot of stories about Willie Nelson's bus, and let's just say that he didn't give a rat's patootie about a lot of money. He was just doing his thing.
Yeah.
And
the funny thing is that a lot of these stories are coming from artists who were popular in the 60s and the 70s. And then like in the 80s, the idea of the manager shifts completely, right? And it becomes like Charles Fenn Oftenson from Metalocalypse. And it's like a lawyer who's like a super smart business professional who runs the whole show. And he's usually off to the side of like this insane band that's, doing all kinds of drugs and getting into trouble. And think Motley Crew or Guns N' Roses, right? And there's this guy in the corner who's the lawyer that has all the business sense, and he's making all the decisions to make sure that the band is being compensated and also that the record company is being compensated. Because oftentimes this is where this weird shift happened where they were like, the record companies were hiring the lawyers to represent the band. Like, what? They wanted to protect their artists, which was weird.
And whose best interest were they in? They were in their own best interest.
Yeah, but I think the problem there was that they were really trying to protect their interest in the sense that they didn't want their artists jumping to another label.
I mean, look at Kiss. There's another prime example. So Kiss was out there thinking, oh yeah, we got a ton of money. We've got these things, we've got this investment. Then they went to their investors and they said, hey, we're going to put on this tour. We need some money. And they were like, oh yeah, about that.
Yeah, you're kind of broke.
We didn't really do a good job. Wait a minute. You gave your brother-in-law $25 million to put up a thing and, blah, blah, blah. I was like, what? And some of the stories that Paul Stanley tells, of how they got shafted.
Yeah.
I mean, if people think that Gene Simmons is the way he is because of, no, Gene Simmons is the way he is because Gene Simmons got screwed. And he was like, no, I'm supposed to be rich and I'm poor.
Yeah.
These guys are, and it's hard for us to imagine that somebody like Eddie Money was penniless, that Billy Joel was penniless, that Kiss was broke, that Pink Floyd owed more than they had.
Yeah.
That it is hard for us to even think that, wait a minute, you made how many millions of dollars and it was gone?
The ones that get me are the guys that like are on the C list, right? So they're not, they're not the ones that you're going to see at the top of a festival billing, right? But somehow and for some reason they have done very well for themselves. And it's mostly because like Lone Star is a perfect example, right? We talked about Michael Britt of Lone Star, right? When HW was on. And Michael Britt is taking care of himself. And I'm sure he's got money put away. And I'm sure he's made some very smart business decisions. If you see his collection of amplifiers and stuff, like the guy's got money, but they haven't had a number one hit. I don't know if they've ever had one, but I would consider them to be like a B or a C lister, and they stayed under the radar and they stayed consistent. And because of that, they have managed to keep their head above water, make smart business decisions, make a reasonable living, live a reasonable lifestyle. It is when you get into the point where like the real rocker, right? Like the Motley Crew people who they're not even asking how much money's in the bank. It's just, I can afford this. And maybe they've got money now, and maybe they weren't broke at any point, but they could have been. And some of these artists you're talking about were,
If it wasn't for, is it Nikki Sixx, the bass player?
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for Nikki Sixx making the decision that it was a hard one for them to buy the rights to their music early,
I remember that. Yeah, they would have been broke.
They would have been broke. They would have been dead broke.
And he understood the business better than the rest of the band. Like, as far as they were concerned, that was their manager.
He was the guy that wrote the big hits.
Mm-hmm.
He understood what it took to get people to rock it. That shout at the devil thing. That was on purpose. He knew people were going to go, shout, shout, shout. He had the business acumen early on to go, I see the writing on the wall of what's happening to other people, other bands, and that are like us, Van Halen, those guys. And he's like, no, I'm going to take control of this. I'm going to take that back. I mean, look at a guy like who is from Van Halen that went off, Can't Drive. Oh, Sammy Hagar. A prime example of a guy who went, you know what? You're going to steal my business? Psh, you can't steal me. I'm going to open a little bar in a resort town, and I'm going to turn it into something crazy.
Yeah, and we've talked about him on the show, and he's a unique case in that he did music as a hobby. The guy was rich when he started. And then maybe that's why the quality of his music has remained consistently high. But like, he's definitely a strange case in that regard. But I think the Van Halen parallel is interesting because if you look at Van Halen, right, the band, the whole band, versus somebody like Motley Crue, Van Halen did have business sense, but they got lucky because they definitely had some moments where they made some kind of bad business decisions in terms of like song credit and stuff like that. And that's why Michael Anthony can go around and play Running with the Devil with Sammy Hagar, was because they left the songwriting credits just like up in the air pretty much. And it was a free for all. And they didn't have any like set, like this is going to be Van Halen,
That's right.
And they could have protected themselves with that. And then later on, like down the road, the songwriter credits are almost, I think now, if you look at the last record that they did, I think it's all Alex and Eddie are the songwriter credits, even though the other guys are involved, because they wanted to protect the business interests of people performing those songs. If things go south with David Lee Roth, they don't want him running out and recruiting Vi and doing Eat 'Em and Smile 2 tour where they're playing Eddie Van Halen tunes.
And that's the thing. When I saw Eat 'Em and Smile, the first tour with Vi and who was on bass?
Billy Sheehan.
Billy Sheehan. Thank you. I can't remember the drummer, but he's not important.
Yeah, no, he is.
He is. I just can't remember.
I can't remember offhand who it was, but yeah.
Anyway, when she and Vi went out, they talk very highly of the one thing about David Lee Roth that they talk very highly about. David Lee Roth knew how to run a band, and he knew how to work an audience and how to control the business for the tour and the album. And that was the thing. He knew exactly what to expect. I remember everything about that concert. When I saw Eat 'Em and Smile, one of the things that hit me huge, I had seen Van Halen as a kid. So seeing David Lee Roth solo, I was like, okay, it's kind of probably going to be hokey. I didn't really know Steve Vai. I mean, I seen the movie
Crossroads, which I think that happened after that, I think.
Yeah, and so I was like,
he was in Zappa's band. Like, that's what everybody would have known him from at that point.
But a lot of people would have known him from that. I didn't really know him from Zappa's band. I knew the xylophonist and a few of the other people. She was huge with his band. And of course I knew Zappa, but I didn't really know Vai from that. And so when I saw Steve Vai and Billy Sheehan with him, I was like, wow, this is awesome. He blew the stage away. But here's the thing that stuck with me to this day. So he played the acoustic intro to Ice Cream Man.
Yeah.
And then he goes, most people don't think I can play guitar. And then he did kill it. He was playing Ice Cream Man. And then as the song was going, somehow he disappeared. We didn't see him. And then when he reappeared, he was like in a fighting cage in the middle of the crowd. That it blew me away to be there, to see that. I mean, I don't know if there's any video of that. There are.
I've seen it before.
Yeah. It was just the weirdest thing, because all of a sudden he's in a fighting cage singing Ice Cream Man to all of us in the middle of the crowd. It was just,
he loved that. He's a great entertainer.
He is.
And I would say, just talking about trajectory for a minute though, let's compare Van Halen to some of their other 80s contemporaries. So Van Halen was like late 70s, early 80s. They didn't take off until the 80s. I mean, they had the first record, which was sort of popular, and then they had the second one. It really wasn't until 1984 that they just like exploded. And that's where I'm getting at. So like, if you look at other bands that were popular during that time period, you had like Motley Crue, bands like Cinderella,
Cinderella, Rat
was another one. Rat was like right before 1984, I think.
Yep.
And then Dokken, and all of these bands, like, none of them are A-list anymore, except for maybe, like I said, maybe Poison, maybe Poison
was a little later,
Rat, really. Not Dokken, not Rat. Those are A-list bands. Like Motley Crue, Poison's later, Van Halen, right?
Van Halen.
And Motley Crue wasn't really huge off their first record. They didn't blow up until their second one came out.
It's funny. The hardcore people love these bands. You're mentioning Dokken and all these others. There was Whitesnake. There was all these.
Yeah, Whitesnake, right? That's another one.
You know who packs still the whole place from that era? Def Leppard. Okay. Journey. REO Speedwagon. Who's the other one that's Styx? I mean, these bands
are late 70s. Don't get me wrong, they're not the same kind of music, and they're also late 70s bands, because they're not. But I'm just saying, they had hits in the 80s, but they were late 70s bands.
Yeah, and up until the death of Rick Ocasek, the Cars,
right?
And still, yet you could say, and with a high degree of accuracy, that all of those guys, they were peaking 80, 81, 82. Yeah. You got to remember Van Halen. So Van Halen for guitar players, Van Halen peaked at Women and Children First. That was huge for the time. Because we had Van Halen, then we had Van Halen 2. But Women and Children First, that was the biggie. That was huge. That had a lot of great hits on it. Great music. But what my point is, we had great guitar music at this point.
Yeah.
It's such a small concentric time frame, really. It was right around the time you were born, right? You were born in 82, right?
Born in 84.
Oh,
the year of 1984. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That was a very good year for a particular guitar that I happened to be looking at. But anyway, that was actually made before that. But anyway, so the whole rush of music, and speaking of Rush, they were in there. They had Signals. They had, Moving Pictures was what, 80, right?
Yeah, I think so. 80, 81. So
really, that was so at that point, you had two real kinds of music that were super popular. There was the super synth pop stuff. We're talking Daryl Hall and John Oates. We're talking that kind of thing, right? And then on the other side of it was the guitar band stuff. I mean, Bad Company was releasing stuff still. We had, like I said, Whitesnake. We had.
We're missing a few, like Ozzy Osbourne.
Ozzy Osbourne, yeah. Oh gosh, yes. Bark at the Moon, and and of course, I mean, it was an incredible time for guitar as a whole. Was that mid 80s?
Yeah, but I'm just in terms of like who out of those bands is like financially solvent today? They didn't end up losing all their money and losing all their success. Because all of these bands, like Dokken was making money, right? Like Rat at one point was making money. And how many of those guys held on to it? Not many of them. Like very few. And some people like George Lynch, like he got lucky because he got out of Dokken and then he went and he did a bunch of other stuff.
And he signed a lot of endorsement deals.
Right. And that's the other thing is like, that's the era of endorsement, right?
That was that is absolutely right. Wasn't Bonnie Raitt one of the early, other than Les Paul, we can go back to Les Paul, but wasn't she one of the first endorsees?
She was early. She was not one of the first. I think she might have been the first female, but she
was definitely the first female.
But the first two endorsers for Fender were Eric Clapton and Yngwie Malmsteen.
Yeah.
Which is nuts when you think about it. Like Clapton makes sense, right? But Yngwie, his guitar is so like hyper customized. I mean, to the point where he's even scalped them, that it's almost like, really? Like that's where you went? Like you didn't try to get something that's a little bit more stock? Or in today's logic, they would have looked at Business Decision and gone, what?
And what year was the Gem?
The Ibanez Gem didn't come out until like 89, I don't think.
Yeah, I know it was late 80s, but
I got OBS up. If you want to look it, if you want to look it up, that would be great. Let me look it up. I don't have my second screen in front of me.
Yeah, I'm looking for the first year of it.
Because it's later than you'd think.
Yeah. Everybody thought, it was 87. So
was it 87 the first debut? I don't know why I was thinking 89, but yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And the movie Crossroads was 86.
He had a Kramer in Crossroads, by the way.
That's right. So, it wasn't an Ibanez.
Wasn't it a red Kramer Beretta?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. You know what's cool?
And what's funny is Macchio played a Telly, which was because Ry Cooder played a Telly.
Right. Ry Cooder played all his parts. You know, it's crazy. Yeah. I was reading this thing over the weekend. They were talking about the fact that Ralph Macchio actually learned Ry Cooder's parts. And even though he couldn't play him at speed or whatever, they would speed him up or whatever. And in that scene, he had to learn Vi's parts.
Yep.
But he was playing him at like a quarter speed. It's like
yep. And they sped up his fingers. You could tell if you watch the movie again.
Yeah, but even so, like it's actually like the editing job on it's pretty good because the first time you watch it, you're like, unless you're looking for it, you're not going to notice it.
So you gotta give Ibanez credit because Ibanez was smart enough to grab Vi while he was super hot.
Well, they grabbed a bunch of dudes in that same time period. Paul Gilbert, Steve Vai, Joe Satriani all became endorsers within like 3 years of each other, right?
Yeah.
And that has been their. This is what people don't seem to realize about Ibanez. So like they have this huge artist roster right now, right? It's like 20 people on there. There was a time when they only had 7.
Like a dead cat. Yeah.
In the beginning, they had 3. Those 3 dudes. They added John Petrucci, right? And they added a couple of other small names here and there. Now they got Andy Timmons, a bunch of other people. And there's some dudes that really do deserve to be like an artist roster thing. But Ibanez has largely become like, we'll make any guitar for any artist and then we'll sell it as a model. And to the point where they've actually kind of like sacrificed their regular models. And it's actually kind of hurt them.
You can't swing a dead cat in the Ibanez catalog without a model coming up. But what's funny is I know they've got more than one SKU, but the gem has been the gem.
Yeah, it didn't change until the Pia. I mean, it was they had the Universe, but that was like there was like another thing,
Yeah, but when you think about it, so Vi really, for the most part, Vi had one guitar, the gem. Satriani had one, the JS, and Petrucci, when he was with them, had one.
He had his model, but it was really the Petrucci model was really an RG. And by the way, if you've ever tried to buy an Ibanez RG Petrucci model, they're A, very expensive, and B, almost impossible to find. They're almost impossible to find. And
of course, Paul Gilbert's has always been that Iceman style.
No, it has not. He started out with a Super Strat with F holes on it.
Yeah. But then he moved. Fake F holes, and then he went to the Iceman type.
Yeah, and that was like
Fireman, something like that.
Yeah, that was the Fireman, right?
Yeah, and with the fake F holes. It's always had fake F holes.
Actually, I think the first Fireman's did not. I think they added the fake F holes recently.
Did they?
To that
and then
I think,
and then he had in the beginning he had the floating bridge, but he went quickly to. He said he went to the fixed bridge.
I don't know. So he's like every version of his model I've ever seen, the Super Strat one always had a fixed bridge on it. But I know he's got some with Floyd Rose. In fact, when I saw him the last time he was playing, he had a Floyd Rose Fireman at one point.
Have you seen that new Fireman where he's got 2 necks, but one is tuned like to the same note up and down, or
so he can play his
notes.
Because he's been he has an Ibanez Micro Paul Gilbert signature model because he uses a short scale guitar to do his guitar solo, and it's tuned in octaves or fifths. So I'm not sure which.
Yeah, I can't remember. I want to say that. Basically,
it's so that he could do some like crazy arpeggio nonsense in a very creative way, and so he's incorporated that into his new Fireman thing that he's had built, so that he can use that for Mr. Big probably next year. That's what I'm figuring. That's going to be the big moment in Mr. Big show. But
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's a guitar innovator for sure. But if you look at their artist roster now, like they got like 50 people on there, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know who half of them are.
Yeah.
I look at the roster and I go, I don't even know who this is. What was it? 60 Cycle Hum in their group, and I'm not going to pick on anybody. I'm not going to name names, but somebody said something about Dinosaur Jr. I don't remember, Jay Mascis being better than somebody else, and it was this is indicative of the age, education, music thing gap, right? They were saying like Jay Mascis was better than Jimi Hendrix or something like that, and we talked about that on the last episode. And I wanted to bring it up. We're pushing an hour and 5 here, and I think we could do an hour 15 for this episode. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Anyway, so they're picking on Jimi Hendrix again, saying Jay Mascis is better or whatever. And I think it was Jimmy. I don't have the thread in front of me to look, and it's not really important who it was. But the point is, this is very much people being like, hey, my generation's music is better than your generation's music. And I've listened to some Dinosaur Jr. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it much either. And for one of the main reasons is Jay Mascis's vocal style. Like, he's singing out of key. He's out of tune half the time. And I think that's part of the charm, but it just annoys the crap out of me. And I didn't think it was all that spectacular sounding. It was very pop punk, and like, that's fine if that's your jam, but don't try to compare people from different genres because your age or whatever is holding you back from being able to appreciate someone else. Could you imagine if all the guys in the 70s didn't like Django Reinhardt because he was, the previous generation's music?
Oh yeah, Django Reinhardt sucks. I can't imagine. I don't remember anybody. I mean, you had your trolls before the internet. I mean, you had people that were like,
sure. You'd run into them in the music stores for sure.
Oh yeah, Brian Johnson is better than
Bon Scott.
Bon Scott, or the other way around. Or there would be people who would say that. Of course, way before that, they would say, "Oh yeah, the Wings is better than Beatles, or Beatles is better than Wings," or I love the stuff that George Harrison did with Badfinger versus what he did.
Can't we just respect it as music? Like,
I don't. But for the most part, people, and especially the artists, and the artists had the bigger voice. The issue I think that has come up is we're proof of that. Any idiot with a microphone and a freaking recording device can post what they want.
Yeah, we do it all the time, every week, once a week.
People have called us that anyway. So what the heck? But in light of that, and looking at that thing, there is definitely a correlation to the fact that now we as musicians, as guitar players, especially not professionals, sit in a bubble of Facebook and what used to be the blogs and the billboards, bulletin boards,
BBS.
And then, the BBSs, and so which really don't go. They're not that big of a history.
No,
and the thing is that. Because of that, and because we live in it, we're not seeing it from outside. We're seeing it from inside it still. We're thinking, oh man, people are saying these things. No, people aren't saying these things. These a-holes are saying these things. I talked to Robert Jackson today, and because Robert and I stay in touch, obviously. And he said, we should do a Know Your Troll practical guitarist /
we don't have enough trolls for that.
We need more trolls.
We need a few more trolls. Join the Facebook group and troll us. Come on, let's get this done.
Troll the hell out.
Let's get this done.
That's right. So we can then respond to the troll
I feel
comments.
like I'm like signing my own death warrant here to suggest that people should troll us and then like and subscribe if they're watching us on YouTube.
That's right. I mean, the fact is that a down comment's the same as an up comment, so we don't care. But the thing that I'm getting at is we live in a world of internet trolls, and now with the masks, this is the thing that I've noticed.
Oh yeah, you get people in public who act like that too.
Yeah, now people lived with that internet anonymity, and before that, we had people who were shooting each other. I lived in San Diego when this was going on. People were shooting each other on the highway because they lived in a highway anonymity. You're inside your car.
Right.
You could take a shot at somebody and keep driving. Nobody knew. And now I've noticed more and more people. Have you watched any of the things that are going on? I don't care what it is, some big event. Everybody's got their cell phones out.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this before. People are living through these cameras. I'm pointing at my camera now. And it's like, if you're gonna live through this lens, and that's your life, and you can see it at, I don't care if it's a protest or a car accident.
Right.
People have got their phones out and they're just recording because they're hoping for that 15 minutes of their little fame. And the other side of it is that you control, because who cares? People are so used to not caring about the troll that now it's moved into real life. We always said it was innocuous, and I used to say, no, it's not innocuous, because it's gonna move into real life, and
people are carrying it around, and they're taking the keyboard warrior thing to being a real warrior,
because now
and that's a problem.
This is what you see, and so if this is all you see of a person, right?
Jim, I know it's you.
Oh shoot! They didn't do a very good job of hiding my identity. But anyway, on a serious note, yeah, this is how we could tell, And if all that you saw, if this is all you're seeing of a person, then they can be mean to each other, and they can be brutal, and they can take that internet trolling and bring it into real life, which is scary to me. You notice I bring my thing down here so you can see my face.
Yeah, I try to come out from behind it,
Yeah, I feel it's important that you see my real facial features and my real reactions, even when I'm snoring. That's why I do this. It's because I snore, people. It has nothing to do with David or boredom. It's just a reaction I have to sitting for long periods of time. I'm used to getting up all the time. But anyway, my point is that I think that once we turn real life into the ability to troll people, and we turn that that switch in people, are they going to be able to turn it off when the mask comes off? And that's what's scary.
It's dangerous to performers, though, in art, and I think it's an interesting thing to bring up, because part of this profession hobby that we take part in is mutual trust between you and the audience, that the audience wants you to do better. But as people become more and more open with sharing the ridiculous feelings and trying to make every event about them rather than about what's going on at the event, it certainly is going to damage something there. And I think that a good performer can probably deflect that or somehow gather that sensibility and rechannel it. But I don't think everybody can do that. And so for any of the little guys, you're going to have trouble. Like, you're going to have to figure that part of the game out.
I can foresee, what I can foresee is, if things continue down the road that we're going, and I know nobody cares what I think, so it's okay if you stop listening now, folks. If we go down this road, I can foresee some gunfights. I can foresee real damage to people. If people were afraid of internet bullying 5 years ago, what is it you're going to do now?
It's terrifying.
When somebody pulls out a gun, or people are doing it already. They're beating each other up. I mean, it started with like stupid stuff, coughing in each other's face. Oh, I'm going to cough in your face. You're afraid of my coronavirus? I'm going to cough in your face. And then they turned it into yelling at each other. And of course, somebody's always got a camera. Somebody's always got you. It doesn't matter what you do. You cannot fart. It's like living in a small town. I grew up in a small town.
Where fart. Everybody could talk to each other like behind your back. It's the same thing, except that everybody has a thing. If you want to find out and you want to think about a new way to think about this, Brad Paisley has a song for you, and I forget the name of it, but it's one of his more recent songs, but it's about basically everything online is forever or whatever.
Yeah.
And I would highly recommend you go listen to that song and listen to the lyrics, and you'll think twice about some of your behavior and what you post on the internet.
Yeah. I think that's where we're going in this world where we're how do I say it? We're going to go to a place that is inescapable.
Yeah, we're already, so I think I know where you're headed, but we're already there. And the problem is there's no way around it. Like you can't fix this situation. We're stuck in it. And it's going to take time for people to learn the new cultural norm and really just to go back to learning manners and how you behave with one another. And it's going to take a generation of real hard parenting in order, or several generations of real hard parenting to shift us back in a direction where anonymity is no longer a protection. There is no such thing as anonymity. First off, this whole thing that you're wearing a mask and nobody can tell you are is not anonymity. It's just giving you a license to believe it is. And so now you think you can behave like a moron, just like you do on the internet. I think his Know Your Troll series is great. If you haven't watched Robert Jackson's Know Your Troll videos, go check him out. Because he does, like, he calls BS. When somebody says something that's like, really, or they obviously don't know what they're talking about. I heard somebody say, he had a comment in one of his videos that I'm like, that's not even true. Like, it was like a fact. Like, Brian May was inspired by Rory Gallagher to play AC-30s. I kind of looked at that and I went, I'm not even sure if they're aware of one another at that time.
Yeah, no.
You know, like how that was in the last troll video, and I saw that and I went, huh? Like what? I don't even know. Like but that's the point, you know. So, check out his videos. Yep. And Jim, you're going to be away for a couple days, right? So I'll be handling all the Facebook stuff.
Yeah.
Won't say any more than that. And if you haven't, you're watching us on YouTube, you should like and subscribe. I hate saying that, and I forget to do it at the beginning of the episode, so I'll do it at the end. And hopefully
get our t-shirts.
Hopefully that's another thing I want to get done this week, and hopefully stay tuned to the YouTube group because I'm going to be dropping some new videos for like gear demo type stuff for the next week or two. So I have been David.
I'm Jim.
And tonight we have been Practical Guitarists.
Yes, we have.